Our proposal for the World Bank is a solution to the flooding issue in Accra, Ghana.
First, we're going to cover some background information about the country we chose, Ghana, and our site of interest, Accra.
Ghana is a West African nation that borders Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Togo, and the Atlantic Ocean. The country gained its independence in 1957 from the British and is now governed through a presidential republic based on the US government system. The capital of Ghana is Accra, which Jamie will go into further detail in the next slide. Ghana has a population of around 30 million people, a GDP of 66 billion US dollars, which brings the GDP per capita to $1,807. Additionally, Ghana has a poverty percentage of 24.2%, most of which is located in the Accra and Accra region.
The region of Accra is located in the southern part of the country. Like Nick said before, it also includes Ghana's capital, actually carrying the same name as the whole region, the city of Accra. The area's population of just under 5 million makes up about 17% of Ghana's total population. It has an area of over 3,000 kilometers squared with a population density of about 1,500 per kilometer squared. A majority of the region is urbanized, while 12% of the population is below the poverty level.
So we decided to focus on the issue with Accra's flood vulnerability. Some of the most apparent factors that contribute to the floods in this region are the fact that the entire area is within a low-lying region, with an average of being 92 feet above sea level, as opposed to the continent's average of 2,000 feet above sea level. A commonly overwhelmed and poorly constructed drainage system that is very prone to being clogged, especially by solid waste. Drainage basins that are not lined with concrete, which leads to erosion and siltation, which is just when water becomes turbid as a result of fine mineral particles. Poor management of solid waste, which is usually just left lying in the streets by the residents of Accra, and runoff from nearby banks. And to put this into a greater perspective, within the past 50 years, $780 million have been spent for flood repairs alone. In the past 6 months alone, 43,000 people have been affected by floods so far in Accra. So much money is being placed into repair that there's little left to spend on tactics to prevent flooding in the first place, which is very detrimental considering that some of the many impacts of these floods include outbreak of diseases, communication disruption, and damaged infrastructures. So here's a topography map that displays the elevation of Accra. And as you can see on the side, there are colors associated with the actual height above sea level. And Accra, which is more south, or the bottom part of the map, is mostly dark blue, which shows that it has a pretty relatively low level of elevation, which explains why flooding is such an issue within that region. So this is a more detailed map that goes into what specific areas within the Accra region are most prone to flooding. As you can see with the blue lines in the middle, aligned with the keys on the bottom, the majority of frequent flooding is due to insufficient drainage or clogged drains, which is mostly, like I mentioned before, caused by solid waste being stuck into the drainage system. While the rest of the issues that are caused by flooding are mostly from natural causes, such as marshes and swamps, and just being so low in elevation to the ocean.
The Environmental Quality Division of the EPA oversees compliance with policies implemented, while the environmental inspector and legal departments of the agency deal with non-compliance. The taxes implemented in 2018 contribute to mitigating environmental problems, and the agency has stated a program in which officers of the agency are brought together in a workshop which helps the non-environmental experts in the group to understand and appreciate environmental issues. As for dealing with floods, the Ghanaian Natural Disaster Management Organization is deployed along with the military, police, and other emergency personnel to repair damaged infrastructure, clear waterways, and demolish properties built close to drainage channels.
In Accra. In order to combat the flooding situation in Accra, we propose a two-phase plan. Phase 1 will address the solid waste issue, and by doing so, Accra's drains can properly function and manage floodwaters and future events. Phase 2, on the other hand, will remediate the erosion and runoff problem. Particularly in this phase, we achieve a 2-for-1 deal because A, it will prevent siltation and help stop drain cloggage, and B, will provide protection to citizens by slowing the floodwater.
So before we can address the meat of the problem, we need to first start by managing the solid waste issue in Accra and more generally Ghana as a whole. Now, for context, we have to keep in mind that the discrepancy between generated waste and managed waste is always increasing, but mostly when very little is being done about it. So for example, in Ghana, the waste being produced in a given area will always increase at a faster rate than can be effectively managed. Over time, the amount of municipal solid waste will only increase because of that. This is caused in part by a combination of poverty and unchecked urbanization in the area, with many discarded resources from urban expansion becoming part of the growing municipal waste pool. The poverty gets factored in when you consider that the wealthy residents of the county can actually pay to have their waste picked up and relocated to a more suitable area. The problem is this is only part of a larger issue increasing the waste in the area. The more direct causes being open dumping, lack of safe designated dumping sites, and really no good programs in place to manage the generated waste. However, there is the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, which is good because it ultimately oversees the policies that we want to put in place to solve the problems at hand with help from the EPA.
So our main focus of phase 1 of the project is to ensure that municipal waste is properly collected and treated throughout the entirety of the region. So 62% of municipal solid waste is disposed of in landfills and has only a recycling rate of 5%, which shows that there's a lack of incentive for proper waste disposal and the collection of reusable materials within Accra. So the main solution for this phase would be for the World Bank to fund a new organization that includes cooperatives that will pay residents who bring in trash themselves. The informal sector would be rewarded depending on how much of waste a person has collected and brought in. So we've estimated that that amount would be around $1.06 per kilogram, which will also end up helping the poverty rate that's so prevalent within the entirety of the Accra region. We also decided that some funding will be funneled to the Accra composting and recycling plant in order to encourage its expansion, since this plant processes and turns organic waste into compost for nearby agriculture, and as well, it also recycles plastic waste. Other materials that they don't use in these two categories are used to manufacture fuels for specific industries within Ghana, which also ends up helping the economy on top of cleaning up the waste. So by splitting part of the loan into this plant, it ends up helping achieve our goal of cleaning up the amount of waste in Accra that is causing so much clogging within the drainage system. And based on similar projects that we'll go over in the next slide, the estimated timeframe will be around 4 to 5 years.
So as a result of our waste management system, the flood risk would be reduced in the more polluted areas and connected areas due to less blockage of the drainage system. We're hopeful that waste picking will develop as a legitimate occupation in the years to come, plus the probable availability of health insurance and protective gear. It will also attract businesses, tourists, and reduce malaria and other diseases. By lowering the environmental impact, it also saves municipalities money. Recycling can result in a more competitive economy and can contribute to a more sustainable development. Recycled objects will also be sent as exports to both China and India, which generates more money for the city as well. A well-known cooperative that had succeeded is Kupamare, which was founded in Sao Paulo in 1989. It has 80 members along with about 200 independent waste pickers who sell its materials. It collects and sells about 100 tons of recyclables a month at a lower cost than the city recycling program. And its members earn about $300 a month, which is approximately twice the minimum wage.
So phase 2 of our proposal deals with preventing erosion. Multiple rivers run through Accra, with the Oda River being the largest, which is highlighted in red in the map to the right. So when It rains, the high siltation of the riverbanks obstructs the water's flow, and the runoff can clog drains. And then the river quickly overflows due to a lack of vegetation on its banks, causing flood damage in the area.
Riparian buffers are most effective when using 3 zones. The first zone typically consists of larger shrubs and trees to allow for dense coverage along the riverbanks. This both prevents erosion in soil and provides organic material to the water stream through leaf litter. The second zone consists of fruit trees and shrubbery and allows for some profit through the distribution of fruits as well as tree lumber, since this area is dense and can have lumber removed strategically in an efficient manner that maximizes both profit and coverage. This zone slows the flow of incoming floodwaters and absorbs it into the soil. The third and final zone primarily consists of wildflowers and grasses that filter the water for pollutants and pull out all the nutrients. We will try to expand the riparian buffer zone as large as possible along the Ottawa River. However, in some areas, there's privately owned property lining the river. We'll try to incentivize their cooperation with the project and planting the trees there. To do this, we'll follow the example set in Maine's riparian buffer development, where the landowner provides a bill for the labor and cost of planting the trees on their property, and the project reimburses them for it. After extensive research, we have since curated a list of possible plants that could be used in this project that will be effective both at protecting Ghana from floods and surviving in Ghana's climate to ensure sustainable, successful riparian buffer zone.
The actual water body, we selected plants that can withstand a greater amount of moisture. These include, with zone 1 being the closest to the actual water body, we selected plants that can withstand a greater amount of moisture. These include the African mahogany, African pear, guinea grass, napier grass, Angola grass, Scotch grass, and teak. We approximated 3 trees per species as to provide spacing for growth. And the Pangola and Scotch grass lack a specific quantity because these are more of like the matted grass you have on your lawn. In zone 2, the purpose of this zone is to slow the water, and so we chose primarily larger trees that can cover a greater area to block more water, as well as provide extra stability to the soil. These include the African mahogany, African pear, African star apple, African whitewood, and the teak tree. We approximated 13 individuals per species per acre, given 10-foot spacing between plantings and a 50-foot wide area to work with. In the final zone, zone 3, we chose grasses that can filter out the water and further slow down the flood water. Plants include the guinea grass, napier grass, Pangola grass, Scotch grass, Sudan grass, and the weeping glove grass. We approximated 58 plants per species per acre based on the 2 previous zones and our ideal density of being 350 plants per acre. In this final table, we summarize everything that I just described in the 3 previous slides. To estimate the total cost of the guinea, napier, Sudan, and weeping lovegrass, we agreed that 5 seeds per plant and then did the math accordingly. Scotch grass and Pangola grass, as I said, was very difficult to determine, so in order to do so, to estimate the cost, we set 1,000 seeds per acre. This may seem small, but remember this will be randomly dispersed in 2 zones that have a total width of 50 feet. In the end, we have a rough final cost of around $1,048.09 per acre. And given that we have approximately 81.5 acres that can be made into possible riparian zones, this gives us a final cost of around $85,500.
Now, in terms of what we're expecting to have to loan out for the entirety of phase 1 of the project, we would have to allot around 11 million United States dollars for waste picking in the informal sector, as well as around 34 million USD for the installation and implementation of composting and recycling plants in Accra. That means that in total, the project's budget is around 45 million USD. For clarification, the informal sector waste picking total was calculated with a price of $1.06 for each kilogram of trash collected, as mentioned before.
For phase 2, our cost estimations run based on the successful planting of 350 plants per acre along the Odawa River at 100 feet on each bank for a total area of 81.5 square acres. This project is estimated to run over the course of 3 years to allow proper time to survey land, negotiate deals, and build these buffer zones. The cost of labor and tree shelters was estimated from the Gulf of Maine's Riparian Buffer Project. We derived an average cost per plant per acre for both labor and tree shelters from their data and applied this average to our project. Tree shelters are a necessary cost in this calculation, as they reduce the mortality rate of planted trees from 70% to between 10 and 30%, increasing the survivability of the riparian buffer zone as a whole. At $2,349 per acre, our real total comes out to around $191,000, which we have then rounded up to $250,000. This is projected above the real amount to account for any possible deviation in the project plan upon surveying the land or after negotiating with any private landowners along the river's length. Finally, the annual maintenance for this riparian buffer has an average cost of approximately $500 per acre, or about $41,000. This cost is not included in the total, as it will be the country's financial responsibility after the project has run its course to completion.
In terms of culture, this proposal will reduce migration caused by flooding and reduce poverty by creating jobs for those who participated in waste picking. The level of biodiversity, habitat potential, and food present in the ecosystem will increase and overall develop the value of the environment by additionally reducing habitat destruction. It will also subsequently reduce waterborne diseases and malaria, lessen displacement, and maintain health infrastructure. As for monetary benefits, the need for reconstruction of damaged infrastructure will be decreased and tourism will consequently increase, therefore bringing in more businesses and profit.
So, coming full circle, flooding and the poor waste management that contributes to it are currently two of the biggest issues facing Accra and Ghana as a whole. Both of these can be remediated, though, with the two-phase plan as we've outlined. The proposed provisions and facilities would ultimately cost somewhere in the range of 45.3 million USD. The plan would simultaneously reduce both solid waste production and the flooding that leads to erosion, as well as providing new jobs and healthcare for those who help with the remediation and the betterment of the country.